Hello and welcome to this webinar where we're going to look at some clever little functions in Excel around lookups and database functions. So these are functions that are going to enable you to sort of pull information together and also summarize information. So first of all, we're going to be looking at Vlookup. Now this is really clever stuff. If you've got two completely separate lists that kind of relate together, you can tie that information together with a simple function which is called Vlookup. I'm also after that going to show you a function called match, and I'm going to show you this in combination with Vlookup, and this just kind of supercharges what Vlookup can do. If you're trying to pull a lot of information, a lot of different columns from two lists, match will help you do this and make your life a hell of a lot easier. After that, I'm going to show you something called index, which I'm also going to use match with. Now, index is a slightly different formula to Vlookup, and it just allows you to be a little bit more flexible about how you're looking things up, but that'll become apparent when we actually have a look. Then after that, I'm going to show you the D functions, which here we've got a few examples: Dsum, Dmin, Dmax. Now, these are all criteria-based ways of summarizing information from a list. So this might be, I don't know, maybe everyone in the North region who works in a particular department, you want to total up their earnings, or maybe everything which was produced on a particular manufacturing line, you know, by a particular operative, and it'll give you those totals, or the highest value, or the minimum value, or maybe an average, which I've not included on here because of space. But very clever functions nonetheless, all about summarizing information. Now, how is the webinar going to work? So I'm going to show you examples on the screen. Now also at the same time, you'll notice once I've started talking about something, there'll be a link at the bottom of the screen that will say download file. Now what that enables you to do is to download the file that I am actually working on. So if you wanted to, you could have a go whilst I'm talking. So you can just download the file, open it, play around with what you see I'm actually talking about on the screen. You'll also, at the end of the session, be asked to fill in a feedback form. This is really there for you to tell us if there's anything that we need to change, or we need to improve in any way at all. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, at the side of the webinar screen where you're going to see me actually be talking, you should see there's an option for you to actually put your name in, put your email address in, and ask a question. Now I'll try my best to answer these questions during the webinar, but most of the time I'll come back to you after the session with some form of an answer. Also, one big bonus of this is, if you miss any part of this webinar, or maybe you just want to watch it again because you didn't quite get it the first time round, you'll get a link sent to you, which means you can watch the webinar for up to 3 days after today for free. So, you've got plenty of opportunity to re-watch this webinar and get the most from it. Now, I don't want to sound too much like a salesperson, but just to let you know, we also do on-site training, so face-to-face stuff. So if you want some further training and you don't want to have any more webinars, please get in touch with us and we can actually come on site with you and bring laptops and provide whatever training you want. And there's more details on the website, which is mentioned just down here, the web link at the bottom. Okay, so let's get on and have a look at some lookup functions. Just come out of this. So this is the file I'm going to be working on, and you should have a download link at the bottom to enable you to open this. Now, just to give you a little bit of an idea of how I'm going to work through this file, can you see at the bottom I've got different tabs. Currently I'm in one called Vlookup, there's one called Vlookup and Match, there's one called Index and Match, and there's one called Database Functions. So when you download the file, as you're following through this, I'm going to move through these tabs as I show you different examples. So it enables you to just stay in the one file and have a look at how everything's working. So the first thing we're going to look at is Vlookup. Now, this is a really smart function, and it's all about relating information together. Now, if you look at my spreadsheet, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit so we can see this a bit better, I have got a defined section which I've called transactions, and I've got a defined section which I've called price list. Now, let me say this before we even start. The place where these two lists are does not matter. I've put them in the same sheet to make this easier to talk about while I'm showing you. But this list here could be in a different tab. This list here could also be in a different file. The location of the list that you're trying to relate together doesn't matter. This is just to make it easier that they're side by side. Now, what Vlookup does, let's say I'm a greengrocer, I've got my transactions, and this is what I'm selling on a day-to-day basis. So, customer comes in and they buy a pair from me. Okay? Now, I want to know the price. Now, the price, I don't really want to have to manually go along to my price list and say, "Whoa, there's pair, it's 4. Can you see it there? And type in 4 just there. Because I have got my price list there, it'd be really cool if I could just get the price for the pair from the price list. And that is exactly what Vlookup is designed to do. It's all about looking for something, so in this case pair, looking for it within a list, finding it, and grabbing some information and bringing it over to where you want it to be. So it's all about relating information together. Now, the first couple of things I need to mention, Vlookup needs for you to have some kind of a common factor between the two lists that you want to marry up. So in this case, can you see I have got item and I've got item. The next thing to mention about Vlookup, we're going to tell it that we're looking for pair, and we're going to tell it we're looking for pair within the price list just there. Now, the piece of information which kind of marries the two lists together needs to be in the first column of the list that you're looking for the information within. So for argument's sake, if price was there rather than being to the right of item, that's not going to work, because Vlookup only ever looks down the first column of the list that you are actually selecting. So it's very important that that's the case. Now, this is why in a bit I'm going to be showing you index and match. That doesn't need the item that you're looking for to be in the first column, but we will come on to that later on. So Vlookup is as so. If I just go equals and then type V and then L to start Vlookup up. Now, V stands for vertical lookup. Now, as you start typing, it fills the information in. Little tip, if you want to grab that, rather than clicking with your mouse, all you need to do is press the Tab key on your keyboard. And can you see it fills that information in? Now, incidentally, we're looking at Vlookup, but there is also H lookup. V is vertical, H is horizontal. They work in the same way, it's just the H goes across. But let's just go for Vlookup here. Now, the trouble with Excel is the language that they use to explain things is not the easiest to understand first of all, and it makes things look more complicated than what they are. So if we look at what it's showing us here, so that's Vlookup, and this is the IntelliPrompt, and this is telling us what we're supposed to be putting into all of these parameters. Now, these things that we've got to tell it are all separated by a comma. Can you see lookup value, comma, table array, comma, column index number, comma, range lookup. So the bit that's bold is the bit it's asking us for. Now, lookup value is what we're trying to find. So we tell it we're looking for a pair. Now, when we drag this formula down, it's going to look at the next line's item, the next line's item, the next line's item. Because we haven't done any kind of dollar in, we've left it completely free and easy. Comma. So this is the next thing it's looking for. So table array. This is the list that you want to try and find pair within. Now, this list, like I said before, at the moment is next to where we are. But this list could be in a different tab. This list could be in a different file. So at this point, if it was in a different tab or a different file, you would literally go to that tab or you would go to that file and then drag. But all I am doing is dragging over like so. Now, really important thing here. You must drag over this, F4 on your keyboard, and it will put these dollars into your reference. Now, dollars are all about fixing that table there. And the F4 key is a shortcut for putting these dollars in. If I highlight over there and press F4 once, can you see it puts the dollars in? Now if you're au fait with the dollar symbol, if you press F4 on your keyboard again and again and again, can you see it will cycle through the different combinations of the dollar symbol that may be required? But for now, just take from me, you need to fix that, because if you don't, when we move this formula down, this box here for the price list is going to move down by a row, down by a row, down by a row. Now, comma, column index number. This is the next thing you've got to tell it. Now, so far what we've said we're looking for pair, we're looking for it within the price list. So what VLOOKUP's going to be able to do so far is, it's going to say, I'm looking for pair, and I want to look for it in the price list. VLOOKUP will then go down the first column. If you remember, the first column is what it's going to look for all the time, so that's why item needs to be the first column. And it'll say, are you pair? No. Are you pair? Can you see there it finds a match? So that's all it can do. It can just find a match to pair, but it's not enabled to actually bring back the price, and that's what column index number is about. So once it's found pair, we need to tell it which column of this list we want to bring back. So we found pair, we want to bring back not column 1, so we don't want the item description because we've already got that over there. We want the price, which is column 1, 2. So we put number 2 in there. So that's the column index number. Following that, comma. Now you've got two options here. Now we are going to look at VLOOKUP doing what's called an exact match. So this is pair to pair. There is also an option for approximate match. Now approximate match is not giving you the ability to match pair to pairs. It is all to do with matching to a sequential set of numbers. It's a very specific set of circumstances you would use this on. Now you can either double click on the word that says false for exact match, or you can type the number 0 in, which is the same as saying false. If you do not do this, you will get some very weird results from VLOOKUP. It will appear to be working, but it will not match to what you are looking for. So either 0 or the word false in there. They're the same thing. Now once I'm ready, close my bracket, press enter. Now can you see for pair it's brought back 4. Now if I retype in here apple, can you see it brings back 3. Now if I come along to this cell here where the formula is, drag this down like so, you'll notice that all of these become NA because there's nothing in here. Because non-applicable means it can't find something. But if I come along and type in some items that I might be selling, can you see there? It's going to fill it in for us. If I just type in pear or apple, can you see there? Now VLOOKUP doesn't care about case. Can you see there? I've spelled apple, but I've made the case a bit weird. Can you see it still brings it back? But if I was to put, for instance, pairs. Now pairs with an S on the end of it, so pair with an S, the plural, can you see it's not in that list, so it comes back NA. Now this is quite a good thing in itself, because sometimes you need to know whether something's in one list but not in another. You can tell that by virtue of the fact you're seeing an NA against something you were looking for. So an NA is not necessarily always a bad thing. It can also help you find things that you need to discover about your list. So that was VLOOKUP in a nutshell. Let's just have a little bit of a recap. So VLOOKUP, if you recall, needs a common factor between the two lists. The common factor in the list that you're looking up on needs to be in the first column of the list. Okay? So what we do is this, equals VLOOKUP. Lookup value is this, comma. Table array is the list that I'm trying to look up from. Now remember, we must drag over that F4 on the keyboard to dollar that off, comma. Column index number is the fact I want price, which is column 1, 2. So we go number 2, comma. Range lookup 0, close the bracket, press enter. And can you see it'll pull that information back? Right, I can just see I've had a question come through. Question is, why when you do your VLOOKUP don't I just select column G and H? Why am I actually highlighting this area here? Now It's a good point, because you could do G and H, and what that would mean is it would enable you to add new products to the bottom and it will always pick them up. The only reason why I'm showing you to do it this way is for efficiency purposes. Because if I explain, if you drag over like so, and you, for instance, have typed something, an item in here that you're looking for, maybe it's something like tomatoes as an item rather than apple, and you can see there tomatoes is not in that list. Now if you've highlighted the entire column, for it to figure out that tomatoes is not in the list, Excel has got to go, is it tomatoes? No, 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 no. All the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, which in Excel 2010 format is roughly 1.4 million rows. So effectively by doing this, you are making Excel's life a lot harder if you have stuff that doesn't match up, and this can decrease the performance of your spreadsheet quite dramatically from the point of view of recalculating or opening and saving. What I would suggest, if you think you're going to need to add more stuff in, maybe go a little bit further down than you want to, rather than the whole column. So really the reason why I am dragging over a region is for performance sake, because VLOOKUP is a very hungry, or a performance hungry function that it's performing. Right, I can see one more question that's come through, which in actual fact is a really good one. So another question that's been asked is, what happens if you have pair there and pair there? So effectively, what happens if you've got a duplicated item within your price list? If I show you, I'm going to type in to the item pair. Can you see pair in the transactions is 4, which is this one here? Can you see it does not go to the second one? VLOOKUP is a one-to-one match. So the first time it finds what it's looking for within the price list, that is what you are going to get. It will not ignore it and go to the next one. It's always the first thing you get. So consequently, if you've got any duplicates, make sure you sort your list in such a way, maybe by, I don't know, last updated date, or price list number, or whatever it might well be, so that the thing you want to have come up based on a VLOOKUP is first. So I mean, ideally you shouldn't really have any duplicates in your list for this particular purpose, but real world as you might. But just to make you aware, VLOOKUP does only pick up the first thing that it finds. Okay, so that's VLOOKUP. And again, I encourage you to have a go with the download file, and also don't forget you've got the 3 days worth of being able to watch this video, a video of this session again. Okay, now next thing I want to show you is I want to show you VLOOKUP with match. Now the reason, if I just explain why I'm going to show you something called match with VLOOKUP, is VLOOKUP is fine and really easy to use until you come to this column index number parameter that you've got to put in. Now it's okay if we're only bringing one thing back, but if we wanted to bring back maybe a price, a cost, a type, or whatever from the price list, we have to do every single VLOOKUP separately, because we have got to go, is it column 1, 2, 3, 4, is it column 1, 2, is it column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it becomes a bit of a pain in the back. So match is a function that we can use to put into VLOOKUP to automatically do the column index number, and it makes VLOOKUP a little bit more powerful when you're pulling a lot of information back. So I'm just going to go to the VLOOKUP and match tab here. Now I'm going to zoom in. This example is set up in such a way, that this kind of pane is highlighted. If you look here, I'm going to, for instance, type in the fact that I'm looking for a pair, and I want to bring back both the cost price and the sale price. Now if we look at the price list, we've got price and cost, and can you see they're in a different order? This one goes cost then price, this one goes price then cost. Now using the VLOOKUP that we did before, which is along the lines of this, so we say lookup value, comma, table array, which if you remember it has to be, first sort of column is what we're looking for. Remember we need to dollar this off as well. So we're looking for the cost in this case, so we would go, right, cost is 1, 2, 3. So we go number 3. But obviously we've got to come along and do that again for the price column. I can't just drag this across because that number 3 will not change. And plus, even if it was, it would probably change up to 4. We want it to change to 2 because if you see, price is column 2 because that's the next thing we want. This is where match comes in. Now match, I'll show you this on its own. Match is a function which by itself isn't really, it kind of is useful, but it's not as useful as when it's combined with VLOOKUP. Match is a way of you telling it something you're looking for, and it will tell it the position that that item is within either a horizontal or a vertical list. So what I mean by this, and I'm going to show you this separate away from VLOOKUP, we will say we're looking for cost, and we will say we're looking for it within these 3 items here. Match will come along and say, right, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. And as it's doing, it's going to say, it's not there, 1, it's not there, 2, it's there, 3. So match is going to return the fact that cost is in position 3 of that. And if you think about it, that's exactly what we're doing in the VLOOKUP. We were saying 1, 2, 3 for cost, 1, 2 for price. So this is kind of like taking the pain out of doing the VLOOKUP, especially if you've got lots of different columns, because you might have 50 different columns you want to pull back from the price list, you know, different properties of the product that you're selling, you know, whatever it might well be. So this really reduces your pain if you've got to bring a lot of information back. So let me show you match on its own, and then we'll combine it with the VLOOKUP. Now, you do need to have a pretty good understanding of how the dollar symbol works within a formula to understand this, and we do have other webinars to cover this as well. But if I just show you match on its own, equals match. Again, I'm just going to use my, if you see that, I've filled it in quickly just by pressing my tab key. In fact, I'm just going to go a couple of lines up so we can see this a bit better. So match. Lookup value is what I am trying to find. That is the fact I'm looking for the cost item. Comma. Lookup array is the fact that I am trying to find it within this. Now you must dollar this off in this example because I'm going to drag this across to look at the price, and I do not want this to move across by 1. Again, remember the dollars are all about keeping that fixed. Comma. Now we want to go for an exact match because we want to exactly match the word cost to the word cost in there. So I'm just going to put 0, or I can just double click there. Once I'm ready, close the bracket, press enter. Now this is telling me that cost is in position 3 over here. So if I just drag this over like so, can you see cost is in position 3, price is in position 2. If I just double click on that formula, can you see there, it's looking for price within that, looking for an exact match. So that is telling me that cost and price are in those particular positions within that spreadsheet, within that set of data over there. And look, this is the cool thing. If I rename these headings, can you see it automatically adjusts? So, you know, once we set this up later on with the VLOOKUP, if the headings change or move around, it will continually adjust where it's looking for that, which is a lot smarter than what it was doing before because it was fixed before, because we physically typed in column 3 or column 2. So it's a really, really cool way of kind of getting around stuff moving around within your list. Right, here's us using it in the VLOOKUP. Now, this is what's called nesting. We're going to put a function within a function. Now, I always think about this as being a bit like a Russian doll. You have a big Russian doll and you have a smaller Russian doll. Now, in this case, the big Russian doll is going to be the VLOOKUP function. So, I mean, when I say Russian dolls, I mean sort of like those toys where you get one within the other, and you open them up. So, the big sort of function is the VLOOKUP. That's the main function. And the smaller function, the one that's going within the VLOOKUP, is the match. And that's going to go where the column index number is. Now, when I approach anything that I'm going to nest, and this is just personal preference, I always do the first function, the bigger function. I don't try and write everything left to right because you end up in a bit of a mess. Well, I do anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my VLOOKUP and I'm going to type in the column index number. I'm going to make sure that works, and I'm going to come back and put the match in place. So I'm going to come up, say I'm looking for pair, comma. Within this table array over here. I am going to drag over that, dollar it off, comma. So I'm looking for cost, which is column 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to do number 3. So I'm doing this as I was before, just so I get the VLOOKUP correct. Comma, 0, because I want an exact match, close my brackets, press enter. Now I'm going to verify, is this right? Pair, is the cost 2? Yes. Can you see it's bringing the right thing back? So I know I'm on the right track now. So I'm just going to move this all around a little bit so we can see this a little bit better on the screen when we have a go. So I'm going to go back into my VLOOKUP. This is the thing that I'm going to put the match within. So instead of typing 3, I want to do a match function. Now, this is personal preference, but what I tend to do, put a little bit of space in there so I can see a separation between the VLOOKUP and the match. I also come along and do this. Match. Just press my tab to fill that in a bit quicker. Close my bracket, because then I know there is a start and an end to the match function. You must always make sure when you're nesting there's the same amount of brackets pointing that way as there is pointing that way. But it's crucial you put the brackets in the right place, because if I'd have accidentally put the bracket, say here, that is going to include part of what I had as the VLOOKUP within the match. So I always make sure I close the bracket off for the sort of like the smaller function, so I know it's contained. So the next thing I do, I'm going to come along and I'm going to add my match function things in. So I'm going to say my lookup value is this. So I am going to use my F4 key now, because what I want to do, I need to fix this onto the word cost, okay? But I need to make it so that when I pull it down it stays on cost, but when I pull it across it moves to price. Now that is, I've got to lock it onto the fact that it's on row 4, but I need to make it so it can go to column D or E if necessary. So that is, press the F4 key on the keyboard until I've got no dollar in front of the C and a dollar in front of the 4. I've also noticed that I need to come back and do that with the lookup value, but I'll show you that in a moment. So if I just come along here, comma, lookup array, this is the list over here. This is the list that I am trying to find the word cost within. And again, I must drag over this F4 to dollar this off. Now after this, click into here. This is all still within the match. And look, you can see it in the formula bar as well at the top. So all I'm going to do, comma, 0, because I want an exact match. So I'm looking for the word cost. I'm looking for it within that heading there, and I'm looking for an exact match. Now, because I'm doing this in this particular way, I want to make the formula so I can just drag it across, drag it down, and it works for both cost and price. So I'm just going to come along here and go to this one here, because I did miss this, I do apologise. We've got to make this so that when we pull it across to the next column, it's still looking at the word pair, but when we drag it down, it'll look to the next row again. So what I do, F4 on my keyboard. So let me just take this back a second. I first of all click into it. This is the bit I want to change the dollar settings for, which is all about how we lock in, that particular cell. I press F4 until there's only a dollar in front of the A, but not in front of the 5. Because when we drag the formula across, we want it to stay fixed on the word pair, but when we drag the formula down, we want it to go onto row 6, row 7, row 8. So we're saying dollar, or think of this as being an S, stop on column A, which is that, but we're not saying stop on row 5. Now the end result of this is, if I now press enter, I'm just going to put some more data in here. Let's just put apple, oranges, let's go for another pear, and let's have another apple. Now watch this. The result of doing all that effort is I only need to drag the formula down. Now before, I'd have had to have done a new VLOOKUP for the price column. I simply drag it across, and can you see it works? Now this is working on the basis that the match function is always looking at this and figuring out where that is within those headings over there, which then tells VLOOKUP, I'm looking for oranges, am I looking for column 3, or am I looking for column 2? Because the match is automatically adjusting based on those headings. Now if I change this heading here to be price, and this heading here to be cost, can you see it changes around the way the information is displayed? Because it is always using that heading there to figure out where it is within those sort of headings of the price list, which is rather than me within the VLOOKUP saying, well, price is in column 2, it's actually doing it for us automatically. So let's just have a little bit of a recap on that. So what we do, equals VLOOKUP. Lookup value is the fact I'm looking for my pair. Now I must dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed on column A, but is allowed to go down to row 6, row 7, row 8, because when we drag this across, it needs to continue to look at pair. Comma. Table array is the complete list, including the item all the way across to the cost. I must dollar this off, otherwise it will move. Comma. This time I'm going to type in match, open and close brackets. I will come back to that. If you recall, I always do my main function first and then come back to the littler function, you know, the smaller one that's nested. So you can see I'm still working on VLOOKUP. So I've started the match, but I'm going to continue and finish my VLOOKUP. Comma, 0, close bracket. So now I'm going to go back and sort my match out. So in here, click into match, in between the brackets, I'm looking for the word price. Now I must dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed on row 4, but is allowed to go to column D for the cost, or column E for whatever else we're looking for. But when we drag it down, it needs to stay fixed on row 4, which is where the headings are. Comma. I am looking to find the word price within the headings of the price list. I must make sure I dollar that off. The final thing, again within the brackets of the match function, is I'm going to do comma 0, because I want an exact match. So now once I press OK, drag the formula down, I'm then able to drag the formula across. Can you see it brings back the price and also the cost for all of those items there? So that is how you use VLOOKUP and match. Now just to kind of make you aware, because we've used match with VLOOKUP, it doesn't change anything that I was saying to you in the VLOOKUP screen, i.e., you know, the first column needs to be what we're looking for. Also, I recommend not highlighting 2 columns, and it will only ever bring back the first item, you know, that it's finding in the list. It's still going to behave the same way. It's just match is making it a little bit more powerful from the point of view of bringing back many columns, and it will match up to the headings. Okay, so that's VLOOKUP with match. Now, a couple of people have sort of been saying on the questions, you know, and this kind of nicely fits into what we're looking at next. Why does VLOOKUP only ever look down the first column? Well, it's just one of those things. It's just tough. That's unfortunately, I sound horrible when I say that, but that's just how it works, unfortunately. But that's where index as a function comes into play. So if I just go into the index and match tab, so on your file, if you want to have a look at that, you're more than welcome to. Let's just zoom in. This is the kind of situation that index alongside match can enable you to rectify. So if we look at the price list on the right hand side, you'll notice I've got a column called cost, then my item, then my price. Now if you recall, with the VLOOKUP we can only ever look down the first column of what we select. So if I wanted to bring back the cost, with VLOOKUP, you know, based on the fact I'm typing, say, pear or apple into this list, with the VLOOKUP it's not possible. With VLOOKUP, what I would have to do would be is grab the cost column, put it to the right, so that I can drag over this, and then it will look up everything to the right of the item column. Now, sometimes that's not possible because you need to keep the original format of your list intact. Now, I'm just going to actually move this down a little bit because this does get to be quite a big function. But what index and match is allowing us to do, it's a little bit more long-winded than VLOOKUP, but it allows us to define which column we want to have as our lookup value. Now, I'm going to show you index on its own, which again, like I was saying with match on its own is a bit rubbish. It's not the best function ever, but when you combine it with VLOOKUP, it's really cool. It saves you a lot of effort. Index is one of those functions as well. Index on its own is, you know, it's useful, but it only really gets very powerful once you sort of put another function in it, like match. So I'll give you a go with index. If I just come in here, I'm going to type in pair, right? I'm going to go to my price column here. So in fact, I'm just going to insert another column there. I'm just going to call it cost. Sorry about this. Let's just adjust these ever so slightly, like so. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say equals index. Now, look, there's two forms of index. It's the first one we want to go for. This second one is if you want to define more than one list, so they're separated. So we're just going to use the first one. And there's three. You've got array, row number, and column number. Index accepts three things. You tell it the array, which is the table. Now, I'm not going to bother dollaring these off, but later on we will. Comma. You tell it the row number you want to have. Now, I'm going to do this manually, and this is why index on its own is not the best thing. I'm looking for pair, so that is in row number 2. So I would say 2. Comma. Column number. I'm looking for the price, which is column 1, 2, 3. So I would type in number 3. Once I'm ready, close my bracket, press enter. Can you see for pair it's bringing back 4? Can you see there? 4 and 4. Now look, you can see the inherent problems with just using index on its own. You do not want to sit there and just physically define that pair is in row 2 and 3, you know, orange is in row 4 and 3. It's pain in the neck, isn't it? But if you remember, match, that function is all about you telling it something you're looking for, you telling it either a horizontal list or a vertical list where you're looking for the word pair, for instance. A match will go down and figure out which position number it's within. So in this case, if we did a match for pair on this, it's going to tell us pair is in position 2, which, can you see there? Row number. That could be how we figure out a row number. Likewise, look, column number, we're telling it price is in position 3. Now again, match, look, we tell it price, we'd tell it this list here, and it'd say it's not price, it's not price, it is price, position 3. So when you combine the index with the match, it becomes quite clever in the sense that you can define the column that you want to look up based on, and you can make it look up based on the headings. And what this is called, it's called a matrix lookup. And the VLOOKUP and match was kind of a matrix lookup, but this is far more powerful because VLOOKUP can only ever look down the first column, whereas index and match can look at whatever column you want. So let's have a look at index with match. So I'm going to go equals index as I did before, and if I want I can just press my tab key to fill it in. My array is my list. Okay, now it's quite important really that you do not include the headings, because if I include the headings, right, and then when I do the match, for instance, I only dragged over apple down to oranges, well, it's going to be out of step. It's going to say, you know, if it finds pair, it's going to say position 2, but because I've included the headings, technically it's position 3. So you need to, just a good rule of thumb, I would exclude the headings when I drag over this. Make sure I drag over like so and press F4 on my keyboard to dollar that off. After this, comma. So I'm now looking for the row number. So I'm going to put in match. Open and close bracket. Now if you recall, I do this so that I can finish the first function, so the index, I want to get that done. Comma, match, open and close bracket. Now I'm also going to close the bracket for the index. Can you see there? Black bracket for index, black bracket for index at the end. So I've done that because now I know the index function is complete, and I can go and concentrate on those match functions. Now if I click onto this match function, this is the row number. So this is where we're going to figure out which row number is pair. So I'm going to click into this. I am looking for pair. Right, so lookup value is pair. So same as what we were doing before when we were doing the headings in the VLOOKUP. Now I must dollar this off in such a way, because I want to be smart about this. I want to do this once, drag it down, drag it across like I did earlier on with the VLOOKUP match. I want to dollar this off in such a way that the pair is continued to be looking at. So I want to stay fixed on column A, but I want to go down to 6, to 7, to 8, to 9. So I put a dollar in front of the A, but not in front of the 5. And again, you just cycle through that just by pressing the F4 key till you get to what you want. Comma. Lookup array. Lookup array is this. This is the bit you can't do with VLOOKUP. This is me telling VLOOKUP, index even, in the match, that I want to define my column that I'm looking for my row number for as being this column here, which is in the middle of my list. I must also make sure I dollar that off. I'm going to finish this match function by going comma 0 because I want an exact match. Now I'm going to click into the next match function, which can you see is my column number. Now look, if you wanted to, you could be a bit more simplistic about this. You could just type in the fact you're looking for the price, column 3. But I want to go the whole hog. I'm going to do a match function so that it will look up my headings like it did within the VLOOKUP, and it's just a bit smarter. So this is my match function for my column number. So I'm going to figure out which column I want to bring back based on this heading here. And if you're any doubt as what part of the index function you're at, just click outside of the match. Can you see it shows you the IntelliType for the index? And you can see it made it bold. If you want to talk about the match, click inside the brackets for the match. Can you see it talks about what the match is doing? So lookup value is the fact I'm looking for the heading of price. Now I must dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed on row 4, but is allowed to go to D to E, etc. So I don't have a dollar in front of the C, I have a dollar in front of the 4. And if you recall, it's the F4 key, quick way of adding those dollars in. I'm just going to move across a little bit. Comma. My lookup array is the fact that I'm looking for the word price within these headings here of my price list. And if you recall, I need to dollar this off so it doesn't move across when we drag this formula over. So I'm going to use my F4 key just like so. Following that, comma 0, because I want an exact match within that match function. Now once I'm ready, I press enter on my keyboard. Excuse me. Now I'm just going to type a few more items in here. Let's go for some grapes, let's go for some oranges, let's have an apple, let's have another bit of pear. Now if I come along and drag this formula down, there's the prices for all of those items, but also if I drag it across, there's the cost for all those items. Now index has allowed us to match this with this, even though this is not the first column of the list. This is the limitation of what the VLOOKUP has. It has to be the first column of the list. Okay, now I've just had a question. Does index and match have the same limitation as VLOOKUP in terms of, does it only find the first one? Yes. It's only ever going to find the first instance. So if you've got 2 pairs, that's what you're going to get. The first pair that you come to. Like when we're looking at the VLOOKUP, if there's pair there and pair there, that's the pair you're going to get. So it's still going to only find the first one. It's still only a one-to-one match that you've got on this, but still it's a big improvement on the VLOOKUP because we can maneuver where we're looking at within that list. So look, just to give you a bit of a recap, equals index, we tell it the array we're looking for, which is this list here, dollar it off using the F4 key, comma, I always, this is personal preference, type in the match functions that are the row, if we click back on these, row and column number of the index. Then I close off my index, so I know that's done. First match is the row number, and this is where I'm going to say I'm looking for a pair. I must dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed on column A but not in row 5, comma, lookup array is the fact I'm looking for it within the item list, dollar that off, comma 0. So I've done the row part of the index, the match function, that's the row part of the index. So I go into the second match. So the second one is the column. So we're going to say I'm looking for price. I dollar it off in such a way that it's not fixed onto C but is on 4, comma, lookup array is the fact I'm looking for it within these headings here, F4 to lock that off, comma 0 because I want an exact match. Now once I'm ready, press enter. If I now drag this formula down, drag this formula across, it'll work. And again, like with the VLOOKUP match, if I were to change the order of these headings, can you see it automatically adjusts? And also the order that these headings are in here does not matter. It's absolutely fine. It will still pick that up. So that is index and match together. Bit more complicated, but if you've got, you know, this kind of quirky list where the lookup values in the middle, you know, it's the way you need to go. So next thing we're going to look at, we're going to have a look at database functions. Now, database functions, these are a kind of a form of a lookup, I suppose, but this is more to do with summarizing information. So you see here we've got a list of people, and we've got what the name is, to their region, to the department, and what they're earning. Now, I might want to, based on, if we look at this sort of section over here, let's just zoom in a little bit, I might want to know for anyone who is working in the east, in the marketing department, with also the people who are working in the north and the customer support department, you know, how much money's being earned. So what's the total? That's Dsum. You know, what's the smallest earnings value? Well, that's Dmin. What's the highest earnings value for that criteria? Well, that's Dmax. What's the average earning value for that criteria? Well, that's D-average. Now, the cool thing about this set of functions is once you understand one of them, they pretty much all work in the same way, except they just return a different value. Now, the key to this is you've got to type your criteria out, and that's why I've got this here. And your criteria must have headings that match exactly to the headings in the list that your criteria are based on. So if this was regions, and that one's called region, not going to work. They need to match exactly. Also, east needs to match to the east that you're looking in there. So if there's any typos, it's going to ignore those typos. So this is Dsum. Let's just resize this a little bit so we can see it a bit better. Equals Dsum. And look, if I just type in Dmin, so you've got Dmin, Dmax, D average, D count, D standard deviation, D variation. So look, you've got all different ways you can do this. They work the same, they just return a different value type. So I'm going to do Dsum. Now there's three things that you're telling. This is the beauty of this because it's such a simple function to use and the language isn't too bad versus what we've been looking at so far anyway. Database is the list that you want to interrogate. And note, can you see I include the headings? That's really important. So I drag over like so. Comma. Field. Field refers to the column that I want to sum. Now this is going to be familiar to you based on the Vlookup we've done so far because it's the same principle. We say we want the earnings column, which is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I put number 5 in there. Okay. Now you can also do this. You can type in the word earnings like so. That's another option, and it will pick that heading name up because earnings is the heading name that you're looking for there. But I'm just going to put in the number 5, comma, criteria is this up here. And can you see I drag over the headings and I drag over my criteria. Close my bracket, press enter. That is now showing you the total of everyone who is east and marketing added together with everyone who is north and customer support. So look, I'm not going to show you a recap of Dsum because I'm going to show you Dmin, Dmax and Daverage because they're all the same thing. So you're kind of getting a recap of all of them because they all work in the same way. So watch this. Equals Dmin. Database is the list inclusive of the headings. Comma. We want to total the earnings column, which is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is 5 in there. Or remember, you can type earnings in speech marks. Comma. Criteria is this up here. Once I'm ready, close the bracket, press enter. That's the lowest earner. So here we go. Dmax. Database is my list. Can you see it's exactly the same, just different name at the start. Comma, 5 because I want the 5th column. Comma, criteria is just this here. Close the bracket, press enter. And look here, Daverage equals Daverage. Database is this list here. Okay, comma, 5, comma, this is my criteria here. Close the bracket, press enter. Simple. I mean, this is one of the clever functions, and I think the clever thing about it is it's quite simple to use once you understand you're looking for headings matching up. Because what they're all doing is they go up to the criteria and they say, right, I've got a column header called region, a column header called department, and it effectively comes and matches those two up together in the list. So it'll say, right, yeah, I've got two headings called that, and it'll say, right, I'm looking for east in the region, marketing in the department. Are you that? Yes. And then it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Grab it, add it to the total, and it'll keep on going down looking for east and marketing. Then it's going to do the same for north and customer support all the way down the list. Excuse me. So it's all about summarising data, but really quickly and based on a criteria. And someone's just beating me to the punch of what I was just saying. Actually, there's a question come through. What happens if you want to expand or contract your criteria? Good question. We're thinking alike. If I just move these down a little bit, let's say for argument's sake I want to look for West and accounts to be incorporated in, say, the Dsum. Well, look, double click. Little trick. This goes for any formula. Go to the edge. See, that's the criteria is the green box. Grab that, expand it. That's now including Western accounts. Look again. This probably won't affect it because I think the lowest earner is 60,000. But if I drag that over there, can you see? Dmax, double click. See, just literally drag over. D average, again, literally drag over. Can you see that will then change it for you there? So if you want more criteria, literally you expand or contract what your criteria wants to be. Okay, so they're the database functions. It's all about summarizing information within Excel. So let's just have a little bit of a recap of what we've had a look at. So so far today in the webinar we've looked at all the lookup functions. So we've had to go with Vlookup, match with Vlookup, index and match. And if you remember, Vlookup is if you just want to do a simple one item lookup. Match with Vlookup is just a little bit shall we say quirky, because it allows you, clever, because it allows you to sort of pull back multiple headings of data really quickly from a list. Index and match is all about making it so that what you're looking for doesn't have to be the first column, which is, if you recall, the limitation of the Vlookup function. That's what index and match allows you to sort of get around. Then at the end we've just had a look at the database functions, which is Dsum, Dmin, Dmax, and because I can't fit it on the slide, we've got daverage, dcount, dstandard deviation, devariation, etc. Now look, do remember you are going to get an email with a link in it which allows you to re-watch this session for free for up to 3 days. And also I do encourage you to maybe keep a copy of that file that we've been using during the session so you can have a bit of a play with this example. And look, I don't want to sound too pushy, but we also, if this is something that's been useful for you, we also do on-site training, and we travel nationwide, so we can come and deliver courses for you at your site. We bring the laptops, and we can deliver whatever brief you want, and we can customize it to whatever you want. But that's enough of me talking. One thing I'd like to ask you after this webinar finishes, which I'm going to close down shortly, you'll be presented with a feedback form. If you could fill that in, that'd be a big help, because that's going to help me improve things for the future, so that if you do ever come on another webinar, they'll be better. But I really appreciate your time and efforts, and thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you again on another webinar. Thank you very much.